Hello and welcome, listeners and viewers. This is 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. And if you've listened to or watched my podcast before, you'll know that I really love connecting with and hosting conversations with guest coaches to promote coaching and coaches, but also to share my real love of learning and the value of learning as well. And I really can't quite believe, I was looking back at my diary this week, I can't quite believe that I've been podcasting for a full year now. And here we are at series 4. And this time the focus is on Neurolinguistic Programming, or NLP. And with a little help from AI, I've called it Inside NLP Life Lessons from Practitioners. So if you're trained in or you're training in the use of NLP, or even if you're just fascinated by the concept, then just listen and watch on. For those who are new to NLP, and I promise I won't say this on every episode, it's essentially a combination of models and techniques and strategies that excellence can be observed in human behavior. So they've kind of arisen from that excellence. And it's also concerned with our consciousness and our subconscious thought processes and the behavior that results from that, and how we manage information, how we collate and filter and store it, and how that affects how we then view our own map of the world. And we'll probably talk about maps of the world at some point. Okay, so that's kind of a bit of a brief overview. It can be, though it's not usually used independently of other interventions, but what I know is it certainly is valuably integrated into coaching conversations, and this is what I'm hoping to be talking about with guests as we go through. What a long introduction. So without any more explanation, let me now introduce my guest this week, and this is incredible. A master athlete, a holistic empowerment coach, and herself a podcaster. Welcome, 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 Zoe Doyle.
Thank you. And that was a great introduction about NLP. It makes me excited to actually talk about it.
Thank you. And it's lovely to see you again, Zoe. When I was thinking about the podcast, I was thinking, well, there's so much that we can say about NLP. It's how do you explain it? You just can't in one sentence, really. But that's really what this series is about. So yeah, let's get started then. And I think it would be really helpful if we could begin at the kind of beginning of your journey of coaching in NLP. What can you tell us, Zoe, about how you got into providing the service that you do?
Well, I retrained after lockdown. I've been an athlete for 10 years, and I really started to be interested in the mindset and realized that was actually much more important than even the training. That one system, body and mind, and so I retrained in lockdown and after lockdown, and I did the coaching course and the NLP course at the same time. For me, the NLP was just that extra bit of magic, almost, that ways to really help my clients change in the ways that they wanted to, and promote lasting change. And I think it really resonated with me in the journey that I've been on. So it's something that I've always incorporated into my coaching sessions, and I've made that. If someone wanted just a coaching session, that would be fine. But so far, all my clients have really enjoyed the NLP element.
Brilliant. And perhaps because I've mentioned the athletic element of your history, could you tell us a bit about that story too? Because I think that's amazing.
Yeah. So, well, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease after my first child, and that put me on the path really to getting as well as I could in order to have more children, but learned so much about myself in the process of, and it's like what you said about the excellence of NLP. I was on the journey of mastery in athletics, and it was an unusual journey because I got an autoimmune disease and nearly died, and had to had to start walking and just, eating well and having a focus on my health in a way that I hadn't done before. And that's then led me to start competing, to challenging myself, which which I loved, which I actually thrived on, was good at, and then joined a running club. And I'd never done that before. I had been spotted as a child, but I did loads of sports, and I really found sort of my passion in running, and I've been doing it for 10 years, and I've achieved all the things that I wanted to. I've got world record, British records, world champion, 6 times European champion, and yeah, and I think you learn so much about yourself on that path of mastery, and that is how I got into coaching, realizing that the mindset was so important to performing well, and that actually I could help people in many areas of their life to get the best out of themselves.
Wow. I mean, you said that in the matter of kind of less than a couple of minutes, but my mind is still reeling with all of the accomplishments that you've just described and the very dramatic kind of aspects of life that you've overcome. Really, it's incredible. And when I looked on your website, you've got some amazing photographs, but also I was looking at this combination between performance coaching and coaching and NLP that you offer. Could you say a bit about how you combine those three things?
Yeah, so I coach people and have done in many different disciplines. So I'm I'm qualified in running instructor, swimming, cycling. So I've coached people in triathlon. I take running classes, and I think what I've learned about myself is, and in trying to heal myself of my autoimmune disease, that it is very much like the NLP predisposition, that it's one system, that the body is really important. It holds so much wisdom. Um, so I suppose because of what I've done in athletics, I've naturally got coaching opportunities through running clubs and through athletes. And the interesting thing is that I coach a lot of athletes, but it's much more on their life issues, because it's all interlinked, and that's what I like about NLP. It gets to really deep into what the issues are, rather than just trying to solve things with making people take action on and changing habits. It goes a lot deeper than that, and brings out the subconscious, and makes people aware of themselves at a deeper level.
Interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking about a podcast that I was watching only, I think it was last night actually, a Dr. Chatterjee podcast. And he was talking, you were mentioning various roles there, athlete and mum and coach and, running trainer and swimming instructor and all of that. And he was saying, what would we be actually if we had those roles removed from us? We are our values and our resources. And so it was interesting to me to hear you saying, actually, though I coach athletes, it's not about their athletic identity. It's about who they are as a person, very much, that comes to the fore. That's really interesting. Now, earlier I heard you saying, you mentioned the magic of NLP. Can you tell us a bit more about what you view as NLP's magic?
Oh, I think it's that way of accessing the subconscious in conversation, in doing the exercise in a very laid back way that just reveals to people, memories and things that they have not been conscious of, and it changes everything. Like it changes how they view themselves and how they can reframe past experiences or understand the hold that it's had on them. And to me, that's just so important and can make real lasting change.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And as we're talking again, I'm still thinking, gosh, talking about NLP is one thing, experiencing it is something entirely different, isn't it? Not entirely different, but it's almost like you have to experience it to really get it. So let's move to your particular NLP interest then, Zoe. And I know that the strategy of something that's called parts integration is something that's a real passion for you and that we're going to focus on. So could you share with us, please, just a bit of your knowledge, if you will, your knowledge and your understanding about the strategy of parts integration and how it can be applied to help people make changes? Maybe you've got a case study or something similar you could share.
So it's about internal conflict, and it's a beautiful exercise, I think, of sort of having the sensory experience and the visualization of two parts of you that are in conflict or that and then it's about integrating them. So realizing that at the core, they both want the same thing for you, but protection mechanisms, and they're kind of looking out for you. And the way the exercise is that you talk about yourself in a third person, so that you're talking directly to the part and asking them what they want for you and what their intention is, and then you have this dialogue between the two parts who have got different ideas about the way forward. They're kind of conflicting views. And then what normally happens is you realize they have the same intentions at heart, and then you can, it's a bit like a relationship that you're sort of asking both the parts what they will give up, what they will agree on, and what they want from the other part, and you come to an agreement, and often, not always, but then they will become one, and you will invite them to come back into your heart, or integrate into your system.
That's a lovely explanation, thank you. So as an example for people who've not come across this before, let's take an athlete, for example. What two parts of them might be in conflict with each other?
Well, when I did this exercise, it's probably easier to talk about myself rather than one of my clients, because I think it's very similar actually for quite a few of my clients. It was the part of me that wanted to be the athlete and wanted all the things that for myself, which the other part thought was selfish, and that I should be more selfless, and I should be at home, and I should be putting my children and my family first, and I shouldn't want these things for myself, because it would mean that in some ways I would have to be selfish, and I'd have to sacrifice. I couldn't be all giving to, and I think that it's a thing for women. We all want to have it all, and we're sold this that we can have it all, and in fact it's very hard to have it all. And it's very hard to have balance in your life, and also the sort of guilt, the mum guilt. It's a real thing, and unfortunately it's sort of passed down through families and generations, and it's hard to break from that.
That's interesting. That's part of the kind of the filtering of information and the storing of information that we were talking about, that happens when we're trying to sort our perception of the world. And I know, Zoe, in this exercise that you're talking about, quite often we hold those parts in our hands when we're doing the exercise. And it reminds me of that phrase that we often say, on the one hand, I want to be this. On the other hand, I want to be that. And, how do you bring the two hands together, sort of thing. Um, yeah, that's really helpful. And you were saying that quite often we find that though the parts can be in conflict with each other seemingly, when we explore it, we find actually both want the same thing for our body and mind, and they can be reconciled in some way. Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, just out of curiosity, because some people might find the notion of parts of themselves and talking about them in the third person unusual. How can we describe to people that in a way that is is kind of comfortable to absorb?
I usually, when I suggest the exercise to my clients, I'm like, just be open-minded. Let's just see what happens. And if they're relaxed, then actually, and some of my clients think, I'm not sure how it's going to sit with them. But, they always surprise me. The, that creative kind of force, that imagination in people. If you sort of tease it out of them, then everybody's got it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really helpful for people to talk about part of me feels like this. It's because it's not making it them. It is part of them, but it sort of separates them, and also be able to have very opposite opinions, because that kind of counterbalance is really normal. And I think sometimes we think we shouldn't have it. It's because it is messy. Because it would be easier just to think one thing. It would be easier if things were black and white, but they're not. And inside us, they're not. And we have lots of parts in our system. And I think the more you can get to know the part of you, that the part that wants to be the perfect mum, and be there for her kids, and then the part of me that is wants things for myself and wants to be the athlete. And it's it's really helpful to, and even it's sort of, this kind of also reminds me of people, inner critics. So often when you go into internal conflict, then um, there'll be the inner critic and some sort of form a part of that who's very hard on you. And I think um, I encourage my clients to get to know that part of them really well, because you need to have another part who's going to say the opposite, who's going to be the compassionate, kind, caring, almost like reparenting. And but you're not going to get rid of that inner critic, that harsh part of you who's hard on you. You can help it soften, and you can help it be quieter. You can have a louder, compassionate voice, but it's something that you need to work on and you need to practice. And yeah, so I think part language is really important, and I'll bring it into coaching sessions, even with people who, I'm doing executive kind of corporate coaching, and I'll be like, oh, so part of you feels like that, and it's just, I find it so helpful to separate things.
Mm. I love the way you've explained that, and I like the way you've said, yeah, it's kind of a natural thing. It's who we are as people. We're going to naturally have things in conflict, and it's hard to get the balance. Um, I was thinking quite a lot of the time, even though two things apparently are in conflict, quite commonly it's around protection. It's around wanting good things for us, like you said earlier. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Zoe. That's a really interesting introduction to and a real kind of applied introduction to parts integration for people who don't know about it. Amazingly, we are coming to the close of our podcast, so can you believe it? So I'd like to ask just a few quick questions, if I may. Can you tell us briefly what particular success you've had in relation to the use of NLP?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think I've just had a lot of success of people understanding themselves at a so much deeper level, and being in touch with their subconscious, and bringing that awareness. And the clients that I've been coaching for a couple of years now, they're very used to the NLP, and I got a very lovely compliment from one of my clients' husband, who said, you know, she's never been happier. Your coaching's really transformed the way that she thinks, and you know, she's done all the work, but I know that I've really helped her, which is yeah, meant a lot.
That's really rewarding, isn't it? And the ripple effect, not just for the individual, but for people around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, for their family, their friends. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Zoe, what one thing would you want people who are listening to take away about NLP?
Well, I think talking about parts, and the language that we use, I think be really mindful of the language you use, even if it's in your head. The things that you say about yourself, and the things you say about yourself to other people, are so important. And I think you should always be questioning, is that the right language that I want to use? Is that what I really mean? And, you know, when people talk badly about themselves, I will just say, no, you shouldn't be saying that. Like, it's so bad. And even if you're saying it in your head, I'm this, I'm that, like, no, change the way that you speak about yourself. And I suppose, like, as an athlete, self-talk, but that inner critic, we've all got it. So we can all develop a much kinder, compassionate way of talking to ourselves. And yeah, think about the words. Words are really powerful.
That's a really relatable tip. Thank you. And then very lastly, how can people reach you in your coaching and NLP practice, Zoe?
On my website, or I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Lovely. And we'll make sure we put those links in the episode description too. So my enormous thanks go to you from me, Zoe Doyle, and to all of your parts. Zoe Doyle Performance Coaching. Thank you so much for sharing your life lessons on NLP and 2020 Coaching Convos. And to 2020 podcast followers, if you enjoyed this episode, then go ahead and share and subscribe. And tell me what you want to hear more about in 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. Till next time.